Hey there, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me today. You're in the Powerhouse Real Estate Podcast, and I appreciate everybody joining us today. If you're having a fantastic Friday and you're tuning in, thanks so much. So I am joined today with my special guest of honor, Ms. Tatum Dezzutti. Tatum is a real estate agent with Remax Trinity in the South Lake area, and she's just killing it. Year in, year out, she's been doing this for a while now, and so I wanted to have her on and share some secrets, some secret sauce about how she's having such amazing success in the marketplace today. So Tatum, how's everything going for you today?
Really, really good. I'm here today, so I'm excited to have a little chat with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Excited to share some great information with all the viewers out there. So let's kind of dive in and talk a little bit about the market here in Dallas-Fort Worth, the real estate market. So you do a number of buyer side transactions on an annual basis, as well as listing side transactions. So you see both worlds or both sides of that coin. Tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, what are you seeing in the real estate market, and what kind of challenges do you feel face not only real estate agents, but buyers right now, or buyers and sellers?
Well, I would say I'm really blessed to be on both sides, and I get to wear both hats. And I love that because, yes, it does make me a better listing agent and buyer's agent, since I know the weaknesses and the strengths on both sides. And probably what I'm seeing on the listing side right now is the misconception of I can just throw it on the market and it'll sell and just like pull a price out of the air. So okay. Even in this market, it's not realistic. Like, you still want to take the time to prep your home and get it ready. And as the listing agent, you need to, explain that to your sellers. The house still should be market ready and show ready and still be hitting all five senses when people walk in the door. And pricing is still key, because I feel like when you want multiple offers, then you really need to kind of narrow down a good price so that you're not overpricing the house, so that you can draw in more buyers. On the buy side, having as much knowledge as possible about understanding the appraisal waiver and understanding, while educating your buyers on everything that they're going to have to pay for that is not considered traditional or what's typically known as normal. And, also helping, which you've also helped a lot with, educating them on that we're not in a bubble, which buyers are so convinced we are in this bubble and it's just going to pop. And then we're going to be stuck with like these crazy prices. And I think that's probably the hardest thing right now, is getting people to realize that it's not a bubble.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I 100% agree with you. And I think there's a misconception of that. But I also think there's some risk as well. Mm-hmm. So although I don't believe that we're in a bubble either, we're obviously seeing pretty insane appreciation levels in housing, right? And I think in general, that's not sustainable long term. We can't appreciate at 8, 10, 12% over an extremely long period of time. No. But I think what we're seeing the fluctuation of heating and cooling of the market. So we're in a heating period of the market, but at some point that is going to cool down, where we're not getting 10% appreciation. We're maybe getting 5 or 3. Or maybe we even slip back to 2%. And so in my mind, the misconception there is that, at some point, home prices are going to come down. And I think it's less about home prices coming down, and I think it's more about them not appreciating as fast.
And I agree with you 100%, because I just got done explaining that to somebody. Because in this market, I will say on my side that I've seen, cash is not king. Like, financing is just as powerful right now as cash. And so with that being said, what I've had to explain to people is that those are true comps then. I mean, so when you have a conventional buyer come in and they're paying $50,000 over market value, and that's being closed out at that price, and it's appraising for, we'll say, whatever, $25,000 over, that's new comp. So that's the new price for that neighborhood. Like, that's what every other home is going to list at. So the prices are going to continue to go up until we.
It looks like we're having some technical difficulties with your video. We can hear you just fine, which is fantastic. Yeah, it looks like the video is cutting in and out. Well, and that's spot on. So what are some things that maybe you do with, your buyers and your sellers, and that other real estate agents can do with their buyers and their sellers to really prepare them for all of those aspects, in the market when they get, hey, we got 30 offers on the house, and 5 of them are cash and 25 of them are financing. What are some things that agents and or clients can do to prepare for those types of scenarios?
So usually what I do when we sit down, obviously at the end of the day, it comes down to the monetary part of it. I mean, unfortunately, it does. And what's in the actual meat of the contract. So probably making, as a listing agent, when I'm representing to my sellers, I will say what usually wins 9 times out of 10 is obviously a leaseback, always a courtesy leaseback, a full appraisal waiver. And right now it's 30,000. It's just like the norm across the board, which is insane to think about, but that's just the reality of it. Along with a lender who actually will reach out, because I do have that issue a lot of times when I have 17 offers and I'm actually going through to see who is actually approved and where they're at in their loan process. A lot of times I can't even get anybody on the phone. So I would say using, I don't know how to word it right, like not the big banks where I have to sit there and it takes me 15 minutes to find somebody, because when I'm looking at that many offers, I don't have that kind of time. And sending your offer over in a, what is it, Dropbox, I think is what it's called. And it's this like the most unorganized email system I've ever seen when I get it. And I have to download it and put it into PDFs to present it. I'm probably unfortunately going to miss something, which I hate doing, but it's very frustrating because I have, 17 to 30 offers that I'm looking at. That's a lot of information that you're trying to track down on a spreadsheet. So as a buyer's agent, trying to send everything over as easy as possible with some like bullet points is such a blessing for the listing agent. Okay. Otherwise, I'm sitting there going, wait, where's the third party? Oh my gosh, where is that? And it helps, and even the letters. I know that a lot of agents still write letters. I actually am a big advocate of that. My buyers always write letters. Whether or not they get read or seen, I have no idea. As a listing agent, I always show them because I feel like someone took the time to write the letter. And so I do feel like that when you were sitting there, I cannot say how many times I've sat there with my sellers and we've won a buyer's agent has won an offer because of the letter, because sometimes it comes up against, 2 really good offers and maybe it's the letter that wins it. Who knows? You never know until you're sitting there. So I always say whatever you can pull out of the hat as far as that goes.
Okay. And you make a great point, because it sounds like a couple points to recap what you said there. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that from a buyer's agent's perspective, the easier that they can make it for the listing agent, that's gonna make that not necessarily jump to the top of the pile, because ultimately the seller's making that decision. But it sounds like that's going to win a lot of favor with the listing agent, and give the listing agent confidence that the transaction is going to be as organized as the presentation of the offer.
Well, and as the buyer's agent, you're doing justice to your buyers because you're providing all the information easily read for it to be presented and not be lost in the shuffle. Just as when you are a listing agent and the buyer's agent wants to know how many offers you have, you like when we answer our phone and tell you, we have offers on the table, we're transparent about it. We obviously can't tell you how, what the price point is, but we can tell you, yes, we have offers on the table. So it works both ways. And like I said, for me, I would hate to miss a really good offer because it was sent to me. Oh my gosh, I had someone send me an offer one time in 5 separate emails.
Oh my goodness.
How confusing that is when you have 20 offers and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
So step number 1, be organized with the offer submission. I love that. I've actually seen a lot of offers come over from some of my real estate partners, including you, that are bullet pointed, right? It's a paragraph, and then under the paragraph, it's like, hey, let me give you the highlights, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. And then a single PDF is attached with all of the contract, all the required addendums and things like that. So I agree, the organization is pretty key. So let's look at 2 different sides of the strategy. So with from the listing side, so put on your listing agent hat And what could you identify as maybe the top 2 or 3 strategies that you see buyer's agents employ that seem to have the biggest impact? I know you mentioned a leaseback, and that sounds pretty critical. So what are another couple of strategies that you're seeing buyer's agents use that you've noticed have had a much higher impact when trying to get buyers contracts?
Well, when we're in such a competitive market, unfortunately, you have to do things that are untraditional. So I explained to buyers paying for title policy. That's a huge one. Paying for title policy, you've now relieved that from the seller. So they're like, ooh, title. Oh my gosh, I don't have to pay title policy. A loose closing date. It doesn't always have to be a loose closing date because 9 times out of 10, we can close quicker or whatever. A good, strong lender, honestly, that answers their phone, that's not like, 7 states away, and you're spending 3 hours trying to figure out where they are. Along with your full appraisal waiver. And even if it's not a full appraisal waiver, a really good partial waiver is even good at times. And
okay.
I don't need you to tell me that your son will mow the lawn for 12 months for free. I've had that. Okay. Because that is, the seller really doesn't care. So they don't need free tacos. I mean, it's just, stuff like that is not going to win it. It's honestly just going to be all about the meat of the offer. No home warranty. The least amount that you're charging the seller for is what's going to win the offer. I mean, honestly, it really is. Okay. And even coming over asking, you don't always have to do that if you're coming over asking by paying for other things. You know what I mean? Like
that makes sense. Yeah, because obviously, somebody coming in at a list price of $350, somebody coming in at $370 is basically the same thing as somebody coming in at $367 and paying title. Right. So that makes complete sense to me. So, and I was going to ask you what kind of the top 3 strategies that you employ, but I'm guessing it's kind of what you just referenced. So we'll bypass that and let's talk about some of the wackiest things that you've seen. So I heard mowing lawn for 12 months. I heard Taco Tuesday. Hey, let's close on Tuesday. We're going to buy you some tacos. What's the wackiest thing that maybe you've seen or maybe you've done to try and sway a seller's mind?
Probably, well, actually, it was not in this market. It was a couple of years ago when we were in a strong seller's market. I had a photographer that I was helping, and we offered free photo sessions for a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which we thought was, oh my gosh, this is great. And they did, they got the house. So sometimes you do have to pull something out of the hat. But really probably my crazy, which I do feel is crazy, is just literally having the buyer pay for everything, which is hard. But that's honestly sounds not crazy, but it is crazy because it's so traditionally not normal. You know what I mean? So literally, actually right now, just honestly having your buyer take on all the costs.
And that sounds like a tough ask, really, because in this market, we're seeing buyers, the need to go over list price, right? And so to double that up by saying, well, not only do you have to go over list price, but you've got to pay title, you've got to waive warranty, no warranty, possibly, waiving option. Are you seeing things like waiving option pretty common as well right now?
I would say out of all of my listings, the strongest ones have waived the option.
Okay.
And obviously that's a risk, and they still have a home inspection. And we obviously still allow a home inspection, but yeah, that's definitely been a big one because for the seller, they look at that because they're obviously moving, so they're buying a home or whatever they're doing. So that's one less risk you've taken off the table for them, and so that definitely will help win some contracts. I do know as a realtor, that's hard because we're always like option period. But even if you can make it, sometimes I've inserted, which can get confusing as a buyer's agent, I'll insert 4 business days. Okay. And a lot of times that'll get accepted. And I've had people call me back 4 business days, but it's because if I'm submitting it on a Friday, then obviously I'm getting more than 4 days because then I'm getting also the weekend days.
And that
So
makes sense, right? Because
6 days.
that
Yeah.
option period, as an agent, when working with buyers, that's part of that protection that you want to help give them to make sure that they're making a sound investment in the property.
Right. And,
so that makes sense.
Obviously, we never advise you to waive your option period. But in some scenarios, like newer properties, I definitely wouldn't go buy like a 45-year-old house in the woods that might have been partially abandoned with no option period or inspection. But if you're looking at a home that's
porch is falling down,
right? Like, oh, the house is literally separating from itself. All right, let's waive the option period. But if you're looking at a newer home and you feel confident enough, and a lot of times if you ask the listing agent, they might have the previous inspection, or if you go into the MLS, sometimes I can just pull the previous paperwork because a lot of times it's still on there in documents. And I'll just go and pull the seller's disclosure from when they bought the property and any other paperwork that they have on there. And that can kind of help highlight some stuff for us.
Now, I want to transition to something that you said earlier, because you had talked about cash buyers not as fantastic in this market as maybe in markets past. And so let me have you elaborate that on a little bit, because from a lending perspective, I know what I'm seeing, and I'll kind of touch on that and you can kind of elaborate. But what I've noticed is you've got cash buyers who obviously traditionally have a lot of power. In this market, they're making offers on multiple properties, and then winning several of them, only to terminate all but the one they want to move forward with prior to option. So talk a little bit about that and maybe elaborate on anything that you see, out from the agent's perspective as well.
So I'll say that a lot of times with what I'm seeing, and obviously this is very dependent on price point too. But a lot of times, just because it's a cash offer, historically cash offers come in lower. So even in this market, I've still noticed that cash offers are typically not my highest offer. They're usually still really good offers, but they're not my highest offer. Are there less risks? Yes and no. But then you have someone with, like, we'll say conventional or FHA, and they'll come in and their offer is actually stronger and they're actually able to offer more. And then if they have a good lender, they can close in 14 days. So they can still do almost all of the things that a cash buyer can do, which I didn't see as much a couple of years ago. It used to be a couple of years ago. It's like, oh, you got a cash offer? Sweet, let's close in 14 days. Well, now you can do that on a conventional.
Okay, I agree with you.
Woo! Like, here's a 14-day close, Sean.
14-day close, and then a 45-day lease back. Like, okay, now we got to go find another house. Okay.
Right. But I'm just saying they're I think with lending guidelines opening up a little bit more, I think that's really blessed a lot of people who don't have large amounts of cash to be able to have the same power as a cash buyer. And I think the last video that you had sent to one of my offers I sent out is you said this offer is the same as cash, which it really was, because they had already gone through the whole entire check process.
And that's very much the case. So, when my team and I have fully verified buyers, we've collected everything. We like to send out custom videos to the listing agent and to the sellers. We actually direct it to the sellers as well. And we do indicate that the offer, the financing is as good as, if not better than, cash, because it's just as strong, but without the fickle mentality of a cash buyer, who may or may not be buying it as their primary residence, right? They don't necessarily, a cash buyer, especially if it's an investor, they don't, as an investor, they specifically don't have an emotional tie to the property. That's what investors are trained to do, is not have that emotional attachment. So we definitely approach it from that standpoint as well. So let's, we've talked a lot about what's having success, what you're doing to help your buyers stand out, what you're seeing as a listing agent that's having success. So let's transition just for a moment and maybe let's talk about what not to do. Like, what are some, maybe one or two like key things that, like, oh my gosh, if you do this, your offer might just get thrown in the trash.
Yeah. Earnest money is key. Earnest money is you telling the seller, hey, I want this house. So do not send me an offer for a $600,000 house with like $1,000 earnest. Like, no, not going to happen. And then ask for, a 14-day option period or something crazy. Like,
Okay,
wow, $1,000, because from the seller's perspective, we're going, oh my gosh. Well, obviously $1,000 is not a whole lot to lose, especially if you're looking at a $600,000 home and you're not even sending me 1% for earnest money. And then they're, well, why didn't you accept my offer? Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe the earnest money. Just throwing that out there. But, I would say probably in this market, honestly, earnest money is key. Option period, make it as short as possible. Obviously I'm not going to tell you to not have one, but, make it as short as possible. Home warranty as an agent, I've been gifting those to my buyers. That's something that I can do and I can take on. I'm happy to do that. That way that kind of makes their offer stand out a little bit more also to the sellers. And those
are some good ones. I like that. So really not, I'm gonna say this very politically incorrect, not cheapskating the earnest money.
Yeah.
And not, not trying to nickel and dime the contract for lack of a better term.
No, and don't send me a 60-day close. No. Nobody wants a 60-day close. Do you know what you think is going to happen in 60 days?
Send a 21-day close with giving your seller a lease back.
Yeah, or I had one that came in and I was like, oh, he wanted a 45-day close. They were offering a lease back, but they actually were asking for my sellers to pay a higher rent price than they pay for their mortgage. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not going to happen. I told my seller and he was like, Tatum, is this real? I was like, I just have to show you all the offers.
I have to visually present these to you. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk and let's talk a little bit. And actually, let me take a pause for a moment. So anybody watching, if you've got some comments or questions for Tatum or myself, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. I'm going to be kind of keeping an eye on that, and we'll try to answer them as best as possible. So comment away. And so let's talk a little bit about just inventory, the elephant in the room. And so it's no secret that we have a relatively unprecedented low level of inventory in the market. So talk a little bit about the low inventory, about the inventory of the market. Is that geographically isolated? Are there areas that just are lower than others because of demand? Kind of talk a little bit about the inventory in the market and maybe what you're doing to try and combat that, or I guess drive business, right? Because you can't sit there and say, well, there's not a lot of inventory, so I'm just not going to do a lot of business this year, right? Right.
I'm not going to do anything this year. No, really, honestly, you have to do your homework a little bit more. Typically, like even just actually the other night, I canceled a showing because unfortunately, my buyer was going out of town, and we were going to go view the home, and she was really excited, but we found out that they were anticipating multiple offers, and they had a very strong offer on the table. And they were going to actually call highest and best for that morning. Well, she would be flying. So there was just, she was like, I can't. So with that being said, I definitely have been doing my homework of finding out, do you have multiple offers on the table? When are you calling highest and best? And I really appreciate when you answer your phone, because a lot of times nobody's answering their phone. And I know that you're busy. We're all busy, but it helps so much so that I don't waste your seller's time or my buyer's time. Because if we find out that you have, multiple offers on the table and you're going to call highest and best tonight at 6 and my showing is at 5, well, I don't have any way to get you the offer. You know what I mean? And so, and everywhere that I go, because I sell pretty much everywhere in the DFW, and I will see going out to Burleson, to Wiley, to Hazlitt, to Highland Village. It's the same. I mean, it's a crazy market. So I think just doing your due diligence as a buyer's agent and doing your homework and maybe trying to check as many boxes as possible to save your buyers the heartache of walking into a house and finding out that they can't even get it, because a lot of times it's frustrating when you show a home and the listing agent doesn't answer their phone and they've already accepted an offer. You're like, oh, awesome.
So you're just waiting there. Yeah. And
this one's for fun, guys. We're actually not going to buy it. So, I mean, it's, just trying your best to navigate and do your homework. And that way your buyers kind of know upfront what they're walking into. And I'm pretty upfront. Like I'll tell them, hey, this one has multiple offers. Hi, it's best Sunday at noon. All right, cool. So we'll look at it for sure. But if we want it, we got to get our offer in ASAP.
And so it sounds like the key takeaways there are kind of one, no brainer. You can't just throw stuff against the wall and hope it sticks in this market, regardless of what side of the transaction that you're on. Two, the preparation and education of the client is critical. And three, doing extra due diligence to understand the motivation of the seller and understand the details of the scenario are also vital to me, it sounds like to avoid heartbreak, right? Because I've got to be honest, I see some clients, they'll put 20, 30, 40 offers in, not win a single one. And by the probably 8th offer that they lost, they're already starting to feel pretty frustrated and bummed out about the process.
Oh yeah.
And we hear this all the time. So my team and I, we connect with all of our buyers that are out shopping on a weekly basis to check in on how the search is going, to proactively answer questions, and to make sure that a lot of times we're being a cheerleader for them, right? In this market, that's probably our biggest role right now is to, every week, rah, let's keep your spirits up. Let's give you some tips and notes to help make your search better. But by 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 offers in, and you're not winning transactions and you're not winning contracts, it can be defeating. And so I think what you said about doing your due diligence as a buyer's agent and getting the ins and outs of the exact scenario on any given property, because to your point, if it's not feasible, if it's not feasible that an offer either can't get in on time or is not going to be even remotely close to being accepted just because of maybe what the seller is asking from a timeline perspective, or the details of what your buyer can do versus what the property will require, right?
Well, yeah, because a lot of times, even some of them I've seen the sellers asking for a 45 to 60 day lease back. And sometimes I have buyers who can allowance that, but I have a lot of buyers who can't. That's just out of what they're able to do. They can't live in a hotel for that long. So they don't, you know what I mean? So that's also something to check first so that your buyers know that walking in before they fall in love with the home, and maybe calling that listing agent and double checking, hey, are they negotiable on this, or do they absolutely have to have, whatever the length of this lease back is that you're asking for? And I think just, what you've helped me do is standing out. I will say all the offers I've won, they've all told me the same thing. They're like, oh my gosh, your lender answers his phone. And I'm like, I know, that's why we use him. It's like, because he communicates. Because it's a big deal, because they want to go through and do their due diligence and check for their sellers, and by you answering the phone and being my buyer's cheerleader and advocate, that helps so much. I mean, that alone just helps you stand out in this market.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I try to definitely put it out there to any real estate agents, whether they're working with my team or not. You've got to work. Everyone in the transaction has to help the buyer stand out, right? As an agent, you're trying to figure out the best strategy to present an offer that's going to make sense for the seller, from the earnest money amount to the option period timeline to the paying title, not paying title, to all of those things. You're working hard to help your buyer stand out from the crowd. And so I would say to any agent out there, if you're working that hard to make the buyer stand out, why wouldn't you want your lender doing the same thing? And so there's definitely some strategies that we do, as you pointed out, that my team and I do to help buyers stand out and really try and get them up ahead of the pack. But any agents out there, work with a lender that's doing that. If you have questions and want to reach out to my team and on how we help our buyers do that, feel free to. But make sure that you're working with a lender that does that. We are coming up on time, and Tatum, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I hope everyone out there watching has been able to glean some nuggets of information that's going to help you drive more success in your business, to help you serve your clients, buyers and sellers even better throughout the second half of this year and really finish the year strong. that's all the time that we have for today. Tatum, any parting thoughts?
No, I hope what I said helped you guys. I know that all we can do is our best job to serve our clients on whichever hat you're wearing at the time, and keep up the good work, and we'll get
Awesome.
it sold or get it bought, whatever way you're going.
There you go. Well, Tatum, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Excited to have you. Stay tuned, and we're going to have another Powerhouse Real Estate podcast here in the coming weeks. So we'll get that announcement out over the next probably 7 days or so. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.